Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. My school has its own version of Bloody Mary or Candyman, depending on which of those stories you're more familiar with. Apparently, there was a janitor who worked at the school named Mabel, although I always thought Mabel was a lady's name, and supposedly this was a male janitor. The story went that he was killed in one of the restrooms in the school, and if you went into the bathroom and said Bloody Mabel 5 times, he would appear in one of the toilet stalls and kill you if you couldn't get out in time. Around the time the article was written, there were frequent closings of the bathrooms, and the article claimed this was because unlucky kids were being killed, and the janitors had to clean up the mess. Of course, when asked why there were no reports of kids missing, the answer was always that the school board was trying to cover it up. When October and Halloween rolled around, it became popular for students to head into those bathrooms and try this out. For all 4 years that I was in high school, this was a very popular thing to do. Of course, you had to either do it after school or cut class, because it wasn't scary if the halls were full of other kids. During my sophomore year, I decided I was going to do it too. I was involved in a play at school, and during rehearsals, we were generally the last people to leave the building. I would stay and help the guy who was doing the sets because I had some minor artistic ability. He and I would very often be leaving the school late in the evening, when the whole building was dark and empty. He had a car and drove home, but I lived pretty close to the school and walked. This meant we exited on different parts of the school. I had the longer walk, and walking down the dark, empty hallways was always a little freaky to begin with. It didn't help that it was October, and I was already feeling the Halloween spirit. As I was closing in on the hallway that led to the exit I would be taking, I saw one of the bathrooms. Immediately, I thought of the school urban legend and got curious. I hadn't seen any janitors around, and it didn't seem like anyone was in the restroom. I thought I could sneak in briefly and maybe check it out. I didn't turn on the light because I didn't want to draw the attention of a custodian if they happened to be moving around somewhere. I used the flashlight on my phone to look around. This bathroom had apparently been closed off, and I was hoping I could find some kind of indication as to why. Perhaps there would have been something showing the presence of a kid who had been attacked, or something. Of course, there wasn't anything like that. I mean, I really wasn't expecting there to be, but I had some brief hopes. I didn't want to see evidence of someone dead or anything, because that's just morbid and wrong, but at least something a little creepy would have been nice. Before I walked out, I glanced at one of the mirrors. I saw the reflection of one of the bathroom stalls. The door was open. I decided I would close it and then try the ritual myself. With a bit of trepidation, I closed the door and went to the mirror. I said Bloody Mabel 5 times, which was the number mentioned in the newspaper article. I waited for a few tense moments for something scary to happen. My heart was pounding. But of course, nothing did. I decided that, as is normally the case with these sorts of things, it was just a tall tale. I turned and began walking out. But as I did, as if caused by a strong wind, even though there were no open windows, the stall door I had closed earlier flew open. I looked in the mirror for a split second and saw that it really had opened by itself. That moment was fleeting though, because I ran out of that bathroom faster than I've ever done anything in my life. I jumped over the barrier just inside the door and ran down the hallway. I didn't stop until I got across the street from the school. I don't know why, but I just felt safer being there, like there was some magical barrier just by not being on school grounds. I don't think most people believed me when I told them what happened. People tend to doubt stories like that. But the same people who doubted me noticed that I never stayed late again after that. I was really scared. When I was a teenager and decided I was too old to go trick-or-treating on Halloween anymore, I would spend the time home alone while my parents took my younger siblings into town for the events. I really liked this because we lived over an hour's drive out of town. This meant I would have the house all to myself for a very long time. Our house was way out in the country, in a pretty rural area to begin with. There wasn't a house I knew of for several miles. That's how remote it was. I had an aunt and uncle who lived in town, and more than likely, my dad would be there while my mom was out with the kids. If my dad had one too many beers, they might end up staying pretty late, and I'd have the house to myself even longer. Of course, I did what any boy my age would do if he was home alone on Halloween. I watched a ton of scary movies. It was my go-to back then, and still is now. But back then, the movies scared me a lot more than they do now. I started to get nervous and jittery as the night went on. Still, that didn't stop me from watching more and more horror movies. At some point, I got a call from my mom telling me they'd be staying over at my aunt's house for the night. My dad had been drinking and kept everyone up too late, and the younger kids had already fallen asleep. They figured it would be easier to sleep over and come home sometime the next day. I went back to watching movies, happy that I now had the whole night to myself. I decided I would stay up as late as I could and fall asleep on the couch. I didn't want to go back to my bedroom at that point, as I'd already freaked myself out quite a bit with all the movies. The house we lived in was a ranch-style home. The living room was right next to the kitchen, and the door to the basement was in the kitchen as well. From the couch in the living room, you could look directly into the dining area of the kitchen and see the back door of the house. The basement door directly faced the back door, so you couldn't see it unless it was open. Even then, you couldn't see into the basement itself. The basement was unfinished and ran the entire length of the house. Other than doing laundry or placing something in storage, I rarely went down there. It had to be around midnight, which for me at the time was really late to be up. I had all the lights off to make the movie experience more atmospheric. The only lights on were the TV and the back porch light, which I hadn't turned off. I was watching my movie when something from the other room caught my eye. It was in the corner of my vision, and of course, anything at that moment would have startled me. When I looked over, I noticed something terrifying. The basement door, which I was positive had been closed and latched earlier, was now slightly open. I watched as it slowly opened more and more. I was frozen in place, seized by fear. I was pretty sure no windows were open, so there was definitely no air pressure causing this to happen. Still, I tried to convince myself there had to be a logical explanation. I figured I was just scaring myself because of the movies. Once the door had opened halfway, it stopped moving. I could see decently into that area thanks to the porch light. After a few moments of stillness, something even more chilling happened. Slowly, a face emerged from around the corner of the door frame. Though it was bright enough for me to tell it was a human face, I couldn't make out any features. But I knew it was looking at me, and it knew I was looking back. Suddenly, an arm reached out, grabbed the door, and slammed it shut. I jumped up, pulled my feet onto the couch, and froze, not knowing what to do. I was too scared to get up and check. Eventually, I ran into the kitchen and grabbed a knife from the knife block. I made sure the door was properly shut, then sat back on the couch holding the knife in front of me. I stayed like that until I eventually fell asleep without meaning to. I only woke up when my parents returned home and found me asleep on the couch, still holding the knife. When I told them what happened, my dad searched the house. He found that a window and the outside basement door had been broken, but there was no evidence of anyone still inside. We never found out who broke into the house that Halloween night. But I was uncomfortable being home alone for a long time after that. This happened when I was a teenager. My parents weren't the greatest, and I often found myself having to do a lot of things without their help. One thing was that if I ever wanted to spend time at a friend's place, they would never give me a ride. We lived way out in the country too, so it was pretty hard to get anywhere. I had a bicycle that I used a lot, but it didn't always help. It was easy enough to ride on the dirt roads, but the gravel roads were much harder. I could ride on the side of the gravel, but if I went over it too much, I'd end up with ruptured tires. When I was 16 years old, a good friend of mine was having a Halloween party that I really wanted to go to. Knowing I'd probably be leaving late, I didn't even bother asking my parents for a ride. I just rode my bike over. This friend lived off the hills in a more populated area where the roads were actually paved. It was a very long ride there and back. The party was actually pretty fun, or at least what I can remember of it. I ended up staying pretty late. My friend offered me a ride home, but he had a really small car, and there was no way to fit my bike inside. So I turned him down. Looking back, I really wish I hadn't. It was a dark night, and the sky had been cloudy all day. There was street light when I was riding through the paved roads, but as soon as I reached the road leading into the hills, it was pitch black. The pavement turned into gravel, and then into dirt. That's when the real problem started. Because of the darkness, I misjudged where the gravel began and accidentally rode straight onto it. The front tire of my bike burst and went flat. I didn't have a patch kit or a pump with me, so I had no choice but to walk the rest of the way home, pushing the bike along. It was going to be a long, miserable walk. As I was walking beside the gravel road, a bolt of lightning lit up the sky. Great. A thunderstorm was just what I needed. I knew I wouldn't make it home without getting soaked. I was so far away, there was no point in hurrying either. Luckily, it didn't start raining, though thunder and lightning rumbled in the distance. It was a small comfort, but better than nothing. At that point, the only thing I was scared of was getting wet. I hate being wet, especially with clothes on. I was used to walking or riding in the dark, so I wasn't really afraid of that. But as the night wore on, I started noticing something strange. I'm not sure how I didn't catch it sooner, but I thought I could see a small flame up ahead on the hill. It looked like it floated for a moment, then disappeared. I figured it was some natural phenomenon I didn't understand, so I didn't think much of it until I saw it again. It was just as far ahead as before, as if it was moving the same direction I was. It was weird. The atmosphere was already creepy from the storm, and this made it worse. Unfortunately, the lightning wasn't the kind that lights up everything clearly, so I couldn't get a good look. I had a light on my bike, but the last thing I wanted to do was shine it toward whatever was out there and draw attention to myself. So I just kept walking and staring at this distant light. Eventually, it turned to face me. As I looked closer, I realized it resembled a jack-o'-lantern face, the eyes, nose, and smile. A chill went down my spine. What a weird thing to see out there. At first, I assumed it was just someone carrying a jack-o'-lantern in the woods, but somehow, that thought was even creepier. Then it happened. One of those big cracks of lightning lit up the entire area like daylight, and for that split second, I just happened to be looking right at the thing. There was a person standing there, wearing the jack-o'-lantern on their head. Just standing there. Staring at me. That flash seemed to last forever. But as soon as the light faded, they were gone. Just gone. I tried to walk faster, even though I knew it wouldn't really help. I don't believe in ghosts or urban legends or anything like that, but I also can't explain what I saw. And the lack of an explanation made it even scarier. I never saw the little flame again before I made it home, but I was scared the entire walk back. I didn't know if it was a ghost, a man, or something else out there messing with me. And I didn't want to find out. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.